Hi and welcome to my playhouse, and today we're gonna be talking about power again. I did a video last week where I talked about enterprise servers and power consumption and power price and what a watt costs a year and stuff like that, and I got an interesting question in the comments below. What hard drive to choose if you want to preserve power? And I've been thinking about that, and I think I have some answers for you. So I've been preparing the blackboard back here, which isn't black at all. There are really different scenarios for when to choose what storage wise, if you want to go NVMe, SSD, HDD, or yeah, that's about the choices that I've made. So let's go check it out. So here are the different technologies that are most common, even, well, home use and in data centers. So the first one we have is NVMe. Very popular because it's very, very fast. Power consumption, it goes from very low to second highest. So if you don't use it, it uses no power whatsoever, 10 milliwatts. And if you use it a lot, it can go up to about 7.8 watts, which is a large span. And so this is like in sleep mode, and this is like in full active mode. So yeah, have that in mind. SSD is a bit of another technology on this. It's different chips than the NVMe up here. So it uses from 0.6 to about 3.3 watts. I'm sure you can find some hard drives, SSDs, that goes outside of this spectrum, but well, that's the numbers that I'm going with in this video, and I picked them up from the internet. So SSD is also quite popular, but NVMe is winning on that regards. If you buy a new PC, well, there's a bigger chance that there's an NVMe in there than an SSD at current. Then we go to the old spinning hard drives like this. A 2.5-inch hard drive. This one is a SAS drive, and there are SATA and SAS drives in both of these two. But 2.5-inch hard drives, they use less power than 3.5-inch hard drives. They go from about 0.7 to 3 watts. And I'm sure you can find some that goes higher, some that goes lower, but that's more like the average usage there. And then we have 3.5-inch hard drives, which is mostly for large capacity. Yeah, let's go over the pros and cons of these different technologies and where to use them and where it's not beneficial to use them. For home use and booting and using on your PC for your boot device, and I would say NVMe up to about 1 terabyte or 2 terabytes is okay. When we go past 2 terabytes, they become too expensive to really be a good option. Less than 2 terabytes, they're good. That's a stupid B. There. Less than 2 terabytes, it would be the best option for NVMe. If we are talking enterprise, we might have some scenarios where we need this maximum speed used and larger capacity than 2 terabytes. And at that point, it becomes very, very expensive. But there is scenarios where that is needed. But for home use or for a home lab, I wouldn't recommend anything over 2 terabytes. At present date, this is 2021, and these keeps dropping in price compared to other stuff. So maybe in a couple of years, well, it might be 4 or 6 terabytes that are the break even from where this is good or bad. Kind of the same thing with the SSDs. Less than 2 terabytes, they're reasonably priced. SSD is not as fast as NVMe, so there is like a 5 to 7 times, this is 5 to 7 times faster than SSD. So SSD is kind of if you have a machine that doesn't do NVMe, or if you have already used all of your NVMe capacity slots in the PC, in which case I could also recommend you to go and pick up these at my little shop where I sell them, and they go into the PCI Express port and they take an NVMe drive and you can put that directly in your PC. So yeah, I can recommend those as well, but that's just me advertising my own shit. But SSD, they are used in enterprise stuff like servers over here, where we have slots in front of the machine where you can put stuff in. But we do also have, I think it's called U2 or something, which is an NVMe in an SSD form factor that goes in front of the server. It's not that regularly used yet, but it might be. So I would also, price wise and power wise, I would say less than 2 terabytes. Should we say equal to or less than 2 terabytes? At the moment I'm sure it's gonna be 4 terabytes in just a little bit. When do you use 2.5-inch hard drives? Well, there is not much of a market for it, but 2.5-inch hard drives are kind of cheap in like 2 terabyte sizes. So if you have, like, I would say from 1 terabyte and up to the maximum is 5 terabyte. You could use this and not be totally stupid doing it, especially if you get over 2 terabytes. It would be very efficient to do this, but at that point it's not a quick thing. There's the thing about 2.5-inch hard drives is that when you reach 2.4 terabytes, they become SMR drives, single magnetic recording devices. I think it stands for, I forget, but it's it becomes very slow to write to the device. Reading is still good, but writing is very slow. Everything over 2.4 TB is kind of slow there. There's a point there. Everything over 2.4 is slower. For storage this is fine. For like log files that change all the time, that is really bad. And for RAID and NAS things, it's really not recommended. So then we have 3.5-inch hard drives, and they use that amount of power, and they're really good for capacity. So everything over 2 terabyte. Well, today you can get 18 terabytes. I'm not sure 20 terabytes, but I have heard about it, so I should be surprised if I'm not a little bit behind and 20 terabytes is on the market. But if it's not, it will be in 2022, I'm sure. If you need large capacity, that's a good option. If you're enterprise and you need super fast capacity, you can also get super big capacity, and it will cost you your firstborn. It's ridiculously expensive. And if we look at the wattage over here, there is not a lot to save by going in either direction. If you have 10 NVMe drives with 1 terabyte on each, and they're used for a long time storage, well, it would be beneficial to go with a 10 terabyte HDD, but that is a weird case. Normally you know where you are in this. You might have an NVMe on SSD as a boot device, then you might have some HDD for large long-term storage, and you might even have an SSD as a caching drive for that, or an NVMe, so to speed this up. Otherwise it might also be using some RAM in the system, so that it will write to RAM and then it will write to these slower media. Another thing that can be an issue can be the number of IOs that these devices can handle. where the NVMe and the SSD, they just have a ridiculously high amount of IOs that you can do to them. And IOs are like number of tasks that they can perform rapidly after each other, where when we get down to the when we get down to the HDDs and stuff, well, we are down to about 15 IOs per device per second, where these might be 100,000 and 200,000. So there's really no competition there. If you need a lot of IOs, you need some NVMe SSD as front. It might be cache. You might be okay with having hard drives in the bottom, but at that point you need to do some tiering. And tiering means that you have storage devices of different not brands but models, so you can have slow storage for the capacity, and you can have really fast storage for the efficiency, and they will work together, and you will have a smart system that determines, well, this file hasn't been used in ages, so we're gonna save it on slow storage, but this tiny little cache file is being used all the time, so it's gonna be sitting in NVMe and just doing its thing up there and never reach down here because there's no reason for it. And then if that log file is suddenly not used anymore, well, it will be moved to slower storage over time. Even entry-level NASes can do this today, where you can put a cache drive in front of your hard drives. So that is pretty cool. You will also see it if you're using Windows. It will use some memory to speed up your hard drives. And you can see it the way that when you start copying data over to your server, it will be very quick at the start, and then it will slow down, and then it will come back up again. It does like this, very fast, very slow, and then it finds somewhere and continues, because at the very top it's using the memory, and then it runs out of memory, and then when it has to write the data that is in memory and still try to get data from the other system, it becomes very slow down here, and then when memory is available again, it goes up and it goes over. So when we're talking prices, 2 terabytes here, I think $100–200 for a 2 terabyte NVMe, and then you can get more expensive stuff. And I think it's almost the same with SSDs. They are not as widely used as they have been, so prices are going down, but the prices are similar on those two. Then we have the 2.5-inch hard drives. If you want a 5 terabyte one of those, well, it's about, I think it's the same price as a 2 terabyte SSD or NVMe, about the same price as that. If you want a 20, well, at the moment it's an 18 terabyte hard drive, it's about the same price as if you wanted a 4 terabyte NVMe. So you get about 5 times the capacity down there, and I have found that these are actually not slow. They're very quick for a spinning disk. So price wise and power wise, NVMe up here, we should probably see that. It benefits a lot from, there is no spin up time on NVMe. So you can request data from an NVMe, and a milliseconds after you have gotten your data, it can go directly into sleep mode. And if you then request something again, well, you will almost immediately get your data, because it never sleeps, like really sleeps. It's electric, and it can be woken up in like 2 milliseconds. SSD is a little bit slower than that. I don't really have how much slower it is, but it does also go in a lower state mode where it doesn't use any power. So that is more or less when you're not asking it to do anything, well, it will use less power. And then if you ask it to work hard, it will use more power. Whereas the HDDs, well, they are spinning, so they if they go into sleep mode, they spin the platters down, and if they have to come out of sleep mode, it takes ages compared to the other two. It might be using more power than the SSDs and the NVMe's. Because of that, it doesn't go into sleep mode nearly as fast. So it uses the, well, let's say that this is 3 watts. it uses those 3 watts way more than this one uses its 7.8 watts. So probably this is quite a bit more power consuming than the NVMe and SSDs. When they're working full speed, well, these are more power hungry, but most of the time the hard drives will be using more power than the SSD and NVMe because they don't spin down as quickly. If you leave them overnight and they spin down, of course they will use less. I'm a bit iffy if a 3.5 inch hard drive spins down. I don't think it uses 6.5 watts, but they do have that disadvantage that if they go into power save mode, they take ages to boot up again. So a little scenario here. If we have a server and it has 8 hard drives in front of the server, and they are 2 terabyte hard drives, 2.5 inches. These uses 3 watts a piece. Let's just say they use that all the time for the sake of this experiment. So I found in my last video that my power here cost about 21 Danish kroners for every watt every year. I actually found after I had done the filming that it was a bit more than that. It's 23 kroners, Danish kroners, our type of currency. So 23, and that's Danish KR, and that's per watt per year. So 3 watts times this amount, that means that each of these hard drives will use 3 times 30, 22 equals, that's 69, gentlemen. And we have 8 of those. That is 552 Danish kroners a year. We are out of whiteboard. Okay, so that's 1 year. Let's just say that these will last us for 5 years. So 5 years times 552. That equals 2,760 Danish kroners. So now we know what it would cost to run that amount of data for 5 years. It would cost that amount of money. If it runs the hard drives and they use the maximum amount of power all the time. So if the question is, would it be beneficial to replace all of these hard drives with SSDs? It probably would not, because a 2 terabyte SSD would cost at least half of the price as running this for 5 years. So we could get 2 SSDs, 4 terabytes for that price. Now with these we have 16 terabytes, and that's way more. And even if we get SSDs, we can't be sure that we'll make any savings, because they also use power and we haven't calculated that yet. So if the capacity of the 16 terabytes is all that we need, and we don't need the speed of NVMe or SSD, we always want more speed. But if, let's say it's your film collection, or if it's something else like that, it's not needed. It will stream Terminator 2 just as good from an HDD as an SSD or an NVMe, no problem whatsoever. That is fast enough. But what would be beneficial would to go for a bigger hard drive. If we could replace all of those 8 hard drives here with one big 3.5 inch hard drive, let's say an 18 terabytes, we can just about get an 18 terabytes for that amount of money. And instead of using 8 times watts, we would only be using 9 watts. And that would make a different calculation down here. 9 watts for 5 years would cost us 1,035 Danish kroners. I know that has to be put on top of this amount, but we kind of have to. These probably wasn't free either. Well, if they were free, we could sell these, hope to get an amount like this, and then make a saving in the coming years. It would be difficult, because if you're running them in a server that runs 2.5 inch hard drives is usually not the same server as is using 3.5 inch hard drives, so it's not an easy swap. So here we have the different options. NVMe, there's actually an NVMe SSD as well. It's the same thing. I don't know where it lies. We have SSDs in different form factors. This is to go in front of the server. This could be it's a drive cage to go inside of the server. Then we have 2.5 inch spinning drives, and they are of course also available in drive cages. And then we have 3.5 inch hard drives over here. So I hope that sparked a little conversation. Christmas is coming, so if you wouldn't mind going seeking out my little shop, I'll make sure to leave the link in the description. You know that no one is going to give you that present for your home server that you really want. So go check and see if I have it, and you can always say that it's second hand, and she might let you get off easy when you tell her that it's recycling. But go check out my little shop, my PlayHouse shop, in the links in the description. There's still room for spinning disks out there, especially 3.5 inch hard drives for capacity. It's really stupid to put your film collection on NVMe or SSD. It's way too expensive, and you really don't need that speed. If you need that speed, it's much better to put an NVMe or SSD in front of it as a caching system. That will benefit your wallet considerably. I think that's enough waffling from my side. Remember, if you're a patron of mine, go check out the Patreon videos that I post to you every Sunday. I'm making a new one in a few hours, so there might be a Patreon video from last Sunday that you'll see, and I'll tell you about filming this video, which you've missed and you didn't see, so now you didn't know that this was coming, did you now? I have waffled on long enough. Thank you very much for watching my videos. Do subscribe to my channel so that you can see me again, and have a really nice day. Bye bye.